Welcome to the Private Practice with Soul podcast. My name is Dr. Brooklyn Storm, and I help private practice owners align their business back with their soul's calling, with their big vision and with their soul's purpose. Unlike other private practice coaches, I've traveled the world in search of spiritual resources, spiritual tools, education and information so that you can have the transformation that your soul desires and needs so that you can up-level your business. How much fun is this? I love it so much. Guys, if you're not already a member of the Private Practice Monthly Mentorship Group, please check out the show notes. I would love for you to be there. In the meantime, thank you so much for pushing play today. Let's begin. Good morning, everyone. I hope you had an amazing week. And I know it's Monday and it's not Saturday, but I wanted to get this podcast recording out to you so that you had something to listen to on your commute to work that's going to set you up for a really successful day and a really successful week. And so I'm going to keep this one a little bit shorter, but of course it's going to be super duper powerful. So of course, if you have your pen and journal, you'll want to have those out because you'll want to take some notes today. If you're listening in the car, this will be easy for you to remember, and maybe when you get into the office, if you felt called, you could sit down and write this out. But basically, there's been a little bit of a theme coming up in my supervision sessions lately, and I think this is going to be something that needs to be addressed, and I want to do it in a safe space in a really beautiful way. And what I'm talking about is when we work with those clients that stonewall us, that, we feel like we ask them lots of questions and they just kind of shrug their shoulders or they give us one-word answers, and we kind of don't really know sometimes where to go with that. Or sometimes there are also client experiences that we have as therapists where we question, is the client actually getting anything out of our session, out of our time together? Am I providing value? Is this client experiencing a transformation as a result of our time together? And, things like that. Now, these sorts of thoughts as a therapist are really, really normal, and we all have them. It doesn't matter how experienced you are. There are always going to be situations that cause you to reflect on how you're working with clients, and that cause you to reflect on, any skills deficits or knowledge deficits or things like that. And you always want to take these sorts of things to supervision, of course. But the purpose of my podcast episode today is to give you some guidance around something that works for me. So hopefully it's going to work for you as well. So one of the things that I learned years ago when I was just starting out, but it stayed with me the whole time. And ever since then, I've seen it come up in so much of my other training. So as you know, I've got 5 qualifications in coaching. It comes up in coaching a lot. It came up when I was doing my Masters of Counselling at Monash University. It was Masters of Psychology majoring in counselling. And it's also come up in my own training as a supervisor of supervisors. So this stuff, it's not new, but perhaps it's new to you. And that's why I want to share it with you. Very simply, it's called the CLEAR model. CLEAR as in CLEAR, CLEAR. Now, it was developed, I think, around the early to mid 1980s. It came before. Have you heard of the GROW model of coaching, which came about in the 1990s? So quite sort of from the corporate side of things, I think. But it kind of says that in order to improve performance, you need engagement. And so they apply this to a counselling session in order to help the client experience a deeper transformation. That client needs to feel like they're an active part of the process. And there's a structure for this, okay? And the letters CLEAR all stand for a different part of the structure. So what does it look like? I'll give you a rundown. So the client comes in for the session and they're going to sit down. You welcome them into the session, and then you're going to take the first step, which is the letter C. And the letter C usually means contracting. And for us as counselors in private practice, what this looks like is getting some kind of understanding about where the client's at the moment and what they want to experience as an outcome of your time together today. Okay. This helps us understand where the client's at, what they want to get out of the session, so that we can support them in processing things for themselves. And then we're going to check in on them later. Okay. So it just keeps the session on track and keeps the session really focused. So an example of a contracting, and I use, if you work with me, you'll understand that I use the clear model all the time, because I always say, what would you really like? Let's set an intention. What would you really like to get out of our time together today? What would you like to leave with today? Et cetera, et cetera. So you're getting their buy-in right from the very beginning. Okay. Now that's absolutely fundamental when you're working with clients that you find a little bit difficult to engage sometimes. We're giving them a voice, which I know we do anyway, but we're kind of requiring them to say what their desired outcome would be. And then what we're going to do is move into the next stage, which is L, and L stands for listening and acknowledging, right? So all you're doing here is you're just using your micro skills with counseling, all that stuff about, I'm not going to, you know how to do this, but, like active listening and have empathy and, all of that sort of jazz. From the L, you're going to go on to E, which stands for explore. So this is what we're trying to do in terms of unpacking with the client what might be going on here. So we want to have a look with the client at how whatever it is they've brought to the session is impacting them on a psychosocial biological level, right? So all that means is we want to ask them, how is this current thing that you're doing, thing you're believing, belief you have, etc., affecting you at work, at school, in your relationships, in your friendships, your health and well-being, your sleep. We want to understand more. That's what this exploring is. We want to help them understand that there is going to be some kind of we want to build an awareness of how this unwanted thing, if it's an unwanted thing, for example, is having a ripple effect down different areas of their lives, okay? And we want to also get them thinking as well about how things might be different for them if they created a change. If they thought something differently, if they believed something differently, if they did something differently. So we want to explore and unpack, this alternative option for them. Okay. We want to give them a space to support what a future healthy adaptive action could look like. Okay. And that's like the bulk of your session. You spend the bulk of the session in that exploration phase. You're just asking questions. You're not giving any advice. You're not telling them what to do. You're just wondering things with them, right? You're wondering what it might be like if they change this thing, what the effect of that change could be on their relationship or their work or their stress levels or their sleep or something like that, right? And often in this stage of the unpacking and the exploration, so this is probably about half an hour to 40 minutes of your session, the client will probably have some kind of, like a little light bulb moment, or they're going to have like the little epiphany, usually, not all the time, but usually they will. And then you move into the next section, which is A, and A stands for, the action that they're going to commit to changing. And all you're doing is feeding back to them what they've already shared with you in the unpacking stage of that exploration. So we're just going to get them to, I don't know, come up with something about, a commitment that they're going to take between now and the next session to make this change happen. And they're going to want to make the change happen usually because they're the ones that thought of it. And it's what they want. It's not our agenda. Okay. And so because the engagement is there, it's more likely that the client's going to be on board with developing that different behavior, that different thought, or something like that. Okay, so again, we want to ask them in this action stage about what are they going to do, who do they need to be, or who do they need to become, or what do they need to release or let go of, when are they going to do this, how are they going to do it, what's it going to look like, all that sort of stuff, right? So your usual stuff there around action setting. And then the very last minute, it shouldn't really be any longer than a minute or two, is you're just going to move into the last stage, which is R, which does not stand for wrap it up because that sounds with a W, but it's R for recap or R for review. And all we're doing there is saying, okay, Jane Doe or John Doe, okay, you came into the session today and you wanted to have some clarity around X, Y, and Z. You were able to, discuss and talk about these things. And from that, you decided on taking this course of action. And here's what you're going to do between now and when we catch up next. And are you feeling like, as we finish our session today, you're leaving with the clarity that you came in wanting? Are you feeling like we've addressed that thing that you wanted addressed right at the beginning of the session? And they're going to say yes. And they should say yes. If they say no, that's something else I'll tell you in a second. But they're going to say yes, and then they're going to feel like this was a valuable session because they got something out of it. You're going to feel like it was a valuable session because they got something out of it. You're not going to be doubting yourself. You're not going to be wondering if you've got the right fee. You're not going to be wondering if you're worth it or if your service is worth it. And there's going to be no question about whether or not it was a valuable session. How do you get them to yes? Well, it just comes with proficiency through using this model. But one of the tips that I can share with you is absolutely calibrate. And by that, I mean throughout the session, use questions that check in with the client. Have I got that right? Does this sound okay? Am I following you here? Is this what you mean when you say that? Is there anything else that you feel I need to be aware of? Is there anything else you feel you want to share that could help us unpack this a little bit more? Do you know what I mean? So just calibrate, asking the questions, checking in. And it's that calibration and following a model such as this that you're going to be able to see, different results that feel good for the client, that feel good for you as a therapist. Now, is it a counseling model? It's a model of change, and it's used in so many different areas. It's used in business, it's used in coaching. I've got 5 coaching qualifications and I think I learned it in 3. It's done in mentoring qualifications. It's a very, very flexible model that's found in lots and lots of different areas. And it is something that you can use as a counselor. You can absolutely adapt the CLEAR model to fit your own unique approach, your own personality, and whatever the client's bringing in on that day. So as I mentioned, I want you to consider, if you're someone who has a client at the moment that you're feeling like you're getting a little bit stuck with, that you have doubt in your mind about whether or not you're a good fit or whether they're getting anything out of it, just have a look at the Clear model. You know, you can find it online. Go and have a bit of a research, see whether or not it's something that's going to feel comfortable for you. Have a bit of a practice with it. Take it to supervision if you want. I'm just sharing this with you because it's an approach that I use all the time. I love it because it does get results. And this could be a great PD topic for you if you wanted to do a little bit more PD on it. But you have the framework there. Now you understand what it looks like. And I just want you to go away from this podcast today understanding that there are different approaches to counselling, and as a counsellor you're not always going to use the same approach with everybody. We have to be very, very flexible, and we have to understand that sometimes we are going to work with clients who are experiencing different situations, and you know what, when they're stonewalling, when they're unable to work with you, when they're giving you one-word answers, when they're sitting there in very defensive postures and things like that, it's very, very common and normal for you to wonder about what you're doing wrong, if they like you, if they don't like you, if they want to be there, if they don't want to be. All these kinds of things can go through your head because you're a conscientious counsellor. It'd be a worry if they weren't on your mind. But I want you to understand that every client has a story, every client has a history, and it's very possible that something has happened in this client's background around things like trust, or around things like, I don't know, working with authority figures because perhaps they see you as an authority figure instead of an ally. But there could be absolutely something in that client's background. So it's very often not about you. It may not even be about coming for therapy. It could be something else. But you can help them start to feel a little bit of a shift, if it's appropriate, by using a model that gets them really, really engaged like this. Okay, so depending on who your client demographic is, this model can be a really great fit for you. It's not going to be for everybody. I'm just putting it out there as this was coming up a lot. You know, from time to time, themes come up with the clients that I work with, and so I use that to inform what's going to happen on what we're going to talk about in the podcast, because I figure if it's happening for 5 or 6 people, it's probably happening for 500 or 600 people. So I just wanted this to be a really useful, practical episode for you. So there you have it. In other news, things are going super well in Clients on Demand. They're moving into week 5 this week. We've got our live coaching call today, which I just love. Oh my gosh, this group of people are they've developed this really beautiful connection with each other, and they're so supportive of each other, and it's like this really tight little bond now, this really beautiful little community, and they are all doing so well. Some people have launched their websites now. People have increased their online presence. They're starting to receive referrals. Some of them are forming collaborations with other businesses that work with their client group, but they're not in competition with, and all this sort of stuff. And it's just, they're going so well. I'm loving it. There's going to be a pop-up group in a couple of weeks where you can have a bit of a sample of Clients on Demand. So if you want to come along with that, just keep an eye out on Instagram and on Facebook, and you will see there'll be an invitation that comes out. And of course, enrollments for Clients on Demand will open up in June, I think it is. There's a wait list at the moment, but we start the next round in the first week of July. So if you're looking for something to invest in before the end of financial year, you want to have one more quick tax deduction, and you have a need to improve your marketing, well, to close the skills gap, first of all, learn how to market your practice and build your confidence a little bit, to close the knowledge gap and do that too, and to bring in some extra clients for your business so you could be even more profitable next year. This might be a great option for you. Of course, there are other options as well, depending on where you're at. You might want to enroll in a mentoring program or supervision or coaching or something like that. But I think for most people, jumping into clients on demand is going to be the remedy. It's going to be the tonic for helping you take your business from where it is now to where you want it to be in the next financial year, 2022 to 2023. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, do reach out and let me know so that I can make sure you get all the information you need about it. Okay, so I hope that this conversation today is helpful to those of you who need it. I would absolutely recommend that you save it somewhere, because there's no doubt in my mind, after 25 years of doing this, it doesn't matter how long in the tooth you get with it, there's always going to be presentations that are a little bit challenging, and I want you to have a resource to come back to so that you can take what you need from it. And but do take any issues that you have to supervision, of course. If you need anything else that I can help with, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Thanks so much for listening. Have a beautiful day, everybody. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Private Practice with Soul podcast today. If you're looking for clarity, if you need help with branding, your processes, and bringing everything into alignment with your soul's purpose for your private practice, head to the show notes and click the link for more information about the Private Practice Monthly Mentorship Group. You are going to love it. I can't wait to see you in there. Thanks so much for listening. Bye.